Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Cleveland Clinic Emerging GI and Surgery Technology Forum. Our focus tonight is on artificial intelligence. I am the Vice Chair of Innovations at the Digestive Disease Institute at Cleveland Clinic, and it's my pleasure to welcome you tonight. We have people joining us from across the country and around the world. I'm really glad that you're here. This forum was built on a simple idea: that the most important conversations in medicine happen when clinicians, engineers, innovators, and industry all get together in the same room. So that's what we've put together. Tonight, we want to focus on three questions. Where is AI right now? Where is it heading? And what are the hurdles that we have to overcome to make AI help us in medicine? Because the field has moved fast, honest conversation is now not whether AI belongs in medicine, but how do we make it work for us? Over the next hour and a half, we'll ask, can AI make us a better endoscopist or surgeon? What are the regulatory and ethical guardrails we need? How is it changing our day-to-day workflows? Perhaps most provocatively, is autonomous surgery an inevitable destination, or are we opening Pandora's box? Before we dive in, I want to give a sincere thank you to our sponsor, 3D Matrix, for making tonight possible. Their support for forums like this one reflects a real commitment to advancing innovation in our field, and we're grateful. And without further ado, I'd also like to introduce my co-host, Dr. Matthew Crow, a leader in surgical innovation and a true partner in shaping tonight's program. Matt, do you want to say a few words?
I'd love to. Thanks, Amit. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. This really will be an exciting opportunity to talk about AI and how it's directly shaping our clinical practices in endoscopy and surgery, and increasingly how we may be blurring those lines. Obviously, the goal of doing procedures on patients is to treat the underlying disease, but the ability to do that in the least invasive and effective manner continues to be an ongoing pursuit. And we've assembled panels representing experts in clinical fields, in GI surgery, in engineering, and multiple other fields that will hopefully give us a broad view of what these technologies can bring today and what the future may hold. And some of what we talk about tonight will be focused on what is here and now, and a lot of what we'll focus on will be on what is to come in the distant and not so distant future. So please be very active in the chat. Our moderators will be monitoring that and bringing questions forward. And we hope that this will be a fast-paced and enjoyable event for everyone involved. So to kick us off, I'm pleased to introduce our first moderator, Dr. Anna Spivak. She's a colorectal surgeon and section chief of pelvic floor surgery here at Cleveland Clinic, with a focus on MIS procedures and complex surgical techniques. She's obviously an expert in her field with many publications and an international reputation. So Dr. Spivak, I'll let you introduce the panelists for Can AI Make Us Better Endoscopists or Surgeons? Welcome, Anna.
And it is a pleasure to introduce today's panelists. So we have three, and Dr. Austin Chung is the first one. So he is the Chief Medical Officer of Medtronic Endoscopy and the first CMO for GI at Medtronic, where he oversees clinical strategy for the GI Genius AI polyp detection polyp. He's triple board certified in internal medicine, gastroenterology, and obesity medicine. He trained at Harvard and Columbia, and he's a founding president of the Association for Healthcare Social Media. We also have Dr. Pratik Sharma, and Dr. Sharma is the current president of the American Society for Gastrointestinal Endoscopy. He's the chair of ASGE AI Task Force and a professor and GI Fellowship Program Director at the University of Kansas, with over 400 publications, including work in the New England Journal of Medicine. He's one of the foremost authorities on the AI application in endoscopy and Barrett's esophagus. And lastly, Dr. Hyun-Soo Chung, and Dr. Chung is an associate professor at Seoul National University with expertise in endoscopic submucosal dissection and AI-powered endoscopy, having developed AI-based photo documentation system for autonomous optical diagnosis. He performed over 600 robotic colorectal surgeries, and his research has over 3,900 citations, spans gastric lesion classification and AI decision-making in endoscopy. Welcome, everybody, and I'm excited to start us off talking about, can AI make us better endoscopists and surgeons? Why don't we start with a question? Can AI help us with patient selection by predicting risks prior to procedures and therefore allowing for risk mitigation and rehabilitation, something very broad? And tell me your thoughts.
Yeah, I can get started, with that. So thanks for the introduction, and good to see Austin and Hyun-Shu. So pleasure to be part of this panel. So, I mean, risk prediction just in general is one of the promises of, machine learning using large data sets to ensure that whether it's risk prediction for cancer, whether it's risk prediction for response to therapy, et cetera, and of course, on the surgical side, the same thing can apply. Just using a simple thing for procedures, I mean, we're currently looking at prediction of bowel preparation for colonoscopy. So is that something can be done prior to the procedure so that you don't end up starting the procedure and finding out that the bowel prep is inadequate and you stop the procedure, or you try to finish the procedure, have the patient come back within a year, which is what our guidelines recommend. So even something simple like that, which may again sound very simple, but I think both from a resource utilization point of view as well as from a patient perspective, I think it's extremely important. So things are underway, and I think the promise obviously is there, but very early days, I would say, for risk prediction at this stage.
I would just echo that and say that, obviously Pratik and I both are in GI. And so absolutely right. Like, things are still early in GI. There's not much that's really deeply integrated into our workflow thus far. But it is, I think these predictive models are already operational outside of GI, maybe in some surgical specialties and cardiology, certainly, helping predict, admission rates and mortality after undergoing certain interventions. So I think that, there's some obvious applications that we can chase after in GI. We're just not quite there yet.
Yeah, I agree. I also agree with Pratik and then Dr. Chang's opinion. For me, actually, recently, our AI system can predict the lymph node metastasis rate, and then probability of the also can predict the depth of invasion of the early cancers. So then, if they predict well, so we can avoid minimize the unnecessary treatment, and the AI can give us better direction of the treatment, choice of the proper treatment, surgery or ASD, or extent of the lymph node dissection as well.
It is perfect. You led me right straight to my next question, because we went from patient selection and how can that improve us. I love the colonoscopy prep identification. I think that's just something we all struggle with. But how would you see, or how can you think AI can guide us through procedures and help us identify anatomy? Just what you touched on, the depth of invasion maybe would change particular procedure, or how do you see that sort of playing a role maybe in more procedural technical steps?
Yeah, so again, in endoscopy, I'll start off with that, unless Austin, you want to go first, or you, so,
Sure.
I mean, I think, identification of landmarks, again, seems something that is required both from a quality perspective as well as for completion of procedure. So for colonoscopy, it's recognizing the cecum. right now. I mean, we of course train our fellows and residents as to how to do that. And that obviously is being automated, in which the ileocecal valve, the appendiceal orifice, the right colon, left colon, lesions, etc., can be automated. We are currently working on and doing a study on the software to look at something very similar for the upper GI tract. For that, we think that the gastroesophageal junction, for example, is a key landmark during upper endoscopy, which is extremely important. So whether it's the G junction, the pylorus, the gastric cardia, etc. So all of those landmarks, again, because you asked Anna specifically about landmarks, I mean, so simple anatomy, which can be done. And of course, you can take it one step further and then start identifying disease states beyond the normal anatomy after that. So for upper endoscopy, whether it's early gastric cancer, whether it's Barrett's esophagus, there's a software which can tell you the surface area of the Barrett's esophagus, which is there. And then I'm going to punt it to Austin, because he's developed and worked with several related to the colon. So Austin?
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth in terms of, all the different landmark identification things that we, look out for. But yeah, in terms of disease state, certainly at Medtronic, we have GI Genius, which is the first to market AI-assisted colonoscopy device. So it's able to help detect polyps in real time during the colonoscopy. And so what we're talking about here is computer-aided detection, so CAD-E, but also computer-aided diagnosis, which is available outside the US. And certainly we're integrating other parts of the anatomy visualization, like Pratik mentioned, cecal intubation, whatnot. So more to come.
Yeah, I also agree. And then for the field of CAD-E and then CAD-X classification, and then recently we also use the term CAD-Q quality assessment. So they can CAD-Q includes like a landmark, and then minimizing blind spots, and then identifying the exact landmark. And also not only CAD-E, CAD-X, and the CAD-Q, but also we also can use the AI for the assistance during the procedure. So for us, now we recently are developing the AI-assisted guidance of the submucosal dissection. Then they can AI can predict the imaginary dissection line, and then they can overlay the line. So then you can get help from the AI. So for all the field of the GI endoscopy, we can get some help from AI.
That sounds great. It's actually, again, you led me straight to my next question, because I was going to talk to you about how can we utilize AI in maybe identifying complications beforehand, and before, as surgeons and endoscopists, we can do that. And it's, I mean, you talk about anatomy and sort of identifying landmarks. How else do you see maybe utilizing it as almost like a superhuman power to see the complication before it happens, potentially be able to prevent it?
Again, I can start just from a GI perspective. I mean, is what I think what Hyun-Shu and Austin had mentioned earlier about a simple thing like depth of invasion. So if you look at complications, one of the complications for resection, which you guys do a lot at the Cleveland Clinic, specifically Amit, I mean, right? I mean, it's like, is the patient a case for ESD, which now we are pushing the boundaries for T1B cancers? And, is it something even beyond that, that you may not want to do an ESD? Is that somebody who requires a full thickness resection or not? So there, at least for esophageal cancer, as well as for gastric and colon cancer, now there are initial algorithms that have been developed looking at images and videos and predicting the depth of invasion. so that, something which maybe EUS cannot pick up just because of the subtle changes which are there. So it can help, a couple of things. It can tell you what the outline of the lesion is so that you don't resect less, you resect appropriately, your margins, you get better R0 resection margins. But more importantly also is something that is not a candidate for ESD that you shouldn't be doing, in which you could probably run into a perforation or a deep area of involvement which may exist prior to the procedure. So those are, at least from the GI standpoint. I bet Hyunshu can add more from the surgical perspective of how something like this can happen and avoid unnecessary surgeries, for example, if there is metastatic disease or lymph node involvement.
That's fair.
Okay,
That's always good, especially when you mentioned that, the early bigger lesion, early perforation. That's something certainly that's with any ESD can be a challenge. So that's a great point.
yeah, Austin, do you have any some comments? Because I think you're really
Yeah,
done.
I was gonna say that, there isn't much intra-procedurally at the moment, although I think that there's a lot that is investigational right now in terms of detecting perforation or bleeding or other subtle cues. I would also argue that, if we're asking the question, can AI recognize complications? In a lot of ways, certain technologies out there already have AI in it. It's just not sort of branded as AI. And so if we think about our energy delivery, if we think about, some of the other tools that we have like capsule endoscopy, there are elements of AI already embedded in there that can certainly, help detect certain complications before another procedure.
Yeah, also, yeah, very good comments. And then I agree, totally agree. And then, so for us, GI endoscopists, actually, not unlike surgeons, we have a bit a delay, late for adopting a robotic technology. But the surgeons, you already get used to the robotic technology. So it's embedded with its AI. But recently, we are developing the motorized kind of electric endoscopy, and then we can embed a lot of the AI technique with a physical AI. So auto insertion and then semi-auto automation of the procedures, and also using combining haptic feedback. So then that kind of field is now a new chapter, just the beginning new chapter, and then we are very much excited to see what's the future.
Thank you for all this. It's amazing responses. I have another last question. We have just a few minutes left, and it actually ties into what one of the attendees is asking in the chat, and that is, do you think that AI would overall help us improve quality? We kind of proved that, right? We're going to have better recognition of anatomy, perhaps early recognition of complications, but would it improve access to care? And what's being asked about in the chat is specifically about cost of equipment. And would that be accessible in maybe perhaps smaller centers, more remote areas? Would that improve access or hinder it?
Yeah, I mean, so you can look at it in a couple of different ways, right? I mean, this gets more, I think, to also gets into digital health, right? So you're not just talking about, AI and endoscopy or in surgery, which is there, but also gets into telehealth, gets into telemedicine, which in the remote areas, it can definitely improve access to specialists. It can do that. Some of the things which I'm sure you guys are already doing, in which you can probably do better education by using some of those platforms in those areas, access to specialists. Yes, the equipment cost does add to it, right? I mean, so there are capital costs which are required for all of these equipments. Through our societies, we are working on trying to get reimbursement. We're working with Austin, Medtronic, and other partners, to get CPT codes for this so that, you know, physicians and surgeons can get paid for some of the services that they're provided. I mean, it's still early on. You know, I think it will eventually get there, in which it will become to the question about cost effectiveness. I think it's still early days to know what the impact is of this. For example, in Europe, there's a study which has just started about a couple of years ago, looking at whether AI-assisted colonoscopy improves mortality from colon cancer, right? Because that's the ultimate goal. It's not finding 3 additional polyps, which any technology, you know, a distal attachment can do it. So some of that work will take some time. I mean, it's still a new innovation, and whether it's cost effective or not, I think we're still in early days to make that statement. But to the point, yes, in low income areas, in areas where, you know, some of those equipment costs cannot be absorbed by the system, it may increase those disparities. And that's one of the things that we have to be careful about with AI, is that we don't make it in such a way that only the high income or the Western society can do it and the rest of the world lags behind. So that's a true concern of as AI becomes available, not just in endoscopy, but pretty much in our day-to-day life as well.
Yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity to standardize with underserved areas and elevating, you know, some of the skill sets there. In terms of would AI improve access, I think that's a really broad question. I would argue in some ways being able to use AI to help triage patients more appropriately might get patients to care quicker. I also think in terms of AI, we've been talking, I think, a lot about computer vision, but I think that if we're discussing like ambient AI scribes, for instance, I think speeding up our efficiency in seeing patients in the office setting could potentially open up more access. I think AI with helping patients in educating them outside of the clinical setting would potentially also help improve access and help patients get appropriate care faster.
Yeah, I also agree. So, and then proving the cost effectiveness by using AI is very important. It should prove that it can reduce the healthcare cost, and because it's a bit, it has a disadvantage in the carbon footprint. So, it is very important, and it's also important to show how the AI's function performance is really helpful to the clinical setting. So, yeah, like mortality of the colon cancer. So, and also I also want to point out that the education is very important. When we should when we should start let our trainees start the AI, and also recently there's an issue of the de-skilling even in a expert endoscopist. So we should research regarding the education by using AI.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for our wonderful answers. We have a bright future and better access and better care and better outcomes. So, and thank you, Dr. Crow, for opportunity to join.
Yeah, great discussion. I was monitoring the questions that are coming through the chat. We've got a great engaged group here, and this kind of tags along to the conversation. So we don't have a lot of time to talk about it, maybe just a very succinct 30 seconds from each of you. There's a question around competency-based reforms for societies, GI societies, and training to modernize GI training. So how do you think this fits into a more global education role? Any examples, and what do you think the future is? You know, very, very briefly here in the last 1 minute of the session.
I think Pratik can probably speak to this really well because we've collaborated heavily with the ASGE in developing an AI and GI curriculum.
Yeah, thanks, Austin. So, I mean, yeah, Matt, I mean, so the societies will play a critical role, I think, both not just for adoption, but for training of the new generation or the next generation of fellows and gastroenterologists. And from the surgical side, of course, the surgeons, but also developing a curriculum. And then to Hyunshu's point about when do you introduce it? So that's something that we are working on. I mean, the current thinking is that you still allow the trainees to use endoscopy without AI in the initial several months to a year of their fellowship training. And then you gradually, as you would introduce a new technology or new innovation, then you do that after that, so that you're not, letting them not develop their own cognitive and visual skills rather than just, relying on a tool to do that. So it should be in a graded fashion. I mean, again, I think all societies, subspecialties will have to develop their own curriculum, their own way of how they want to train the next generation of either endoscopists or surgeons, with AI. But yeah, I mean, I think it will be a collaborative effort.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Patrick's practice opinion, and the role of the society and the collaboration of each society is very important. And then because it should be balanced between industry and clinicians. So yeah, collaboration is very important.
Great. And I think with that, we'll wrap the session. Dr. Spivak, thanks so much. Dr. Chung, Dr. Chang, Dr. Sharma, outstanding conversation. And then we'll transition to our next session. For the panelists and the moderators, there are questions in the chat. If you get a chance, if you could respond to them, there's quite a few. I'm sure that the attendees would be very happy to hear from you.
The self-assembling peptide, RADA16, is a short chain of amino acids that, due to its configuration of attracting forces, spontaneously organizes itself into a viscous, fibrous structure. RADA16's smart peptides disassemble under shear stress for easy injection and reassemble instantly to adapt to its environment, making it ideal for various clinical applications. When RADA16 comes into contact with the neutral pH conditions of a mucosal surface, its nanofibers are activated and undergo physical cross-linking, forming a scaffold structure very similar to a human extracellular matrix, or ECM. This scaffold forms a protective barrier, facilitating cell aggregation and clot formation to stop bleeding. The barrier shields the wound, supporting healthy levels of inflammation and providing an ideal environment to facilitate proliferation and remodeling, including fast reepithelialization, promoting healing. As the body heals, RADA16 safely degrades into non-toxic amino acids, leaving behind no trace. At 3D Matrix, we've spent over 20 years pioneering this technology, and we continue to push the boundaries of innovation.
Excellent start to the session. Thanks to Dr. Spivak and our panelists for a great introductory session. It's my pleasure now to introduce the co-moderators for our second panel. Dr. Stephen Loop is a clinical health psychologist and director of behavioral medicine in the Department of Gastroenterology here at Cleveland Clinic. Beyond his clinical work, Stephen has been at the forefront of using AI and digital health to scale GI behavioral care, working to bring personalized technology-enabled solutions to patients with chronic disease. Welcome, Stephen. And joining him is Dr. Stephen Dombrowski, our DDI innovation lead, and who works at Cleveland Clinic Innovations, who's been instrumental in translating ideas born here at Cleveland Clinic and our Digestive Disease Institute into real-world solutions that benefit patients. Together, they'll be leading our panel on the regulatory and ethical implications of AI. Dr. Loop and Dr. Dombrowski, thanks for moderating the session.
Thank you, Dr. Crow, for having us. It's great. We'll do a quick introduction. This is a topic that I'm especially interested in. I always get excited about the regulatory and ethical issues with the AI. First panelist is going to be Dr. Tyler Berzin. Dr. Berzin is his associate professor at Harvard Medical School and director of Advanced Endoscopy Fellowship at Beth Israel Deaconess, where he's founding member of the ASGE AI Task Force, and a leading voice on AI medical liability and automated endoscopic performance matrix. He's authored over 175 publications on AI and endoscopy and serves as consulting editor on AI for major GI journal. I'll let Dr. Dombrowski introduce the next panelist.
Thank you. My honor to introduce Izzy Bruker from Chemonics. Dr. Bruker brings over 30 years of medical device development experience, including vice president or VP roles at Johnson & Johnson and Novartis, holds over 17 issued patents. Um, he holds a PhD in chemical engineering from the University of Wisconsin and an MPH from Harvard. He's recognized as an expert on FDA and European regulatory pathways for AI-enabled medical devices.
And next is Dr. Maria Spasova Altieri. Dr. Altieri is section chief for GI surgery at Pennsylvania Hospital and associate professor of clinical surgery at Penn, where she's a member of the Penn Computer Assisted Surgery and Outcome Laboratory. Her research focuses on AI-powered surgical training tools, including validation of the LapBot Safe Holy platform, along with 100 publications on surgical outcomes in minimally invasive surgery.
It's my honor and pleasure to introduce Bill Pine from Medtronic, Vice President of Research and Technology for Medtronic Surgical Operating Unit, and a key architect in the Hugo robotic assisted surgery system. So thank you for joining us. A former tenure track professor at Purdue in surgical robotics and image guided surgery, holds over 100 patents, and is a Botkin Society inductee, Medtronic's highest technical honor, and has founded multiple medical device startups. So welcome.
So we'll go ahead and kick off the conversation. We have a lot of very, very smart people who've been doing this for a while. So I'm curious, what regulatory hurdles have you encountered when trying to implement AI tools in your clinical practice, like FDA approvals or compliance with medical device regulations? And whoever wants to start, feel free to jump in and start.
I'll jump in. I think at a high level, the standard hurdles still apply, right? We're still following the same processes, and FDA is requiring us to do exactly the same things we've done before. I think that hasn't changed. But what has changed that I've noticed and we've noticed as a company is there's a lot more focus on data. You know, where do you get that data? The quality of the data. How do you know it's representative of what you're trying to do from a clinical point of view and make sure it's unbiased? And I think another aspect is they care a lot about how you segregate the data. What are you using for training? What are you using for verification? And you need to keep that independent. I'd say another piece that we've seen is really, I think, looking at the bigger picture, not just the algorithms, but we've had a lot of questions about the human factors side of our validation, just to make sure that we don't have errors that we didn't account for. And if there are, you know, what's our mitigation plan to deal with that? So again, the framework, the standards are the same. It's just maybe the types of questions they're asking are slightly different.
Yeah, let me add a few more comments to Bill's excellent commentary. That's right on cue. The first thing is actually in terms of making a decision as to what is a medical device in this AI world. So, for example, if it's manipulating software images, then automatically it becomes as a clinical decision support tool, it becomes a medical device. If it's a time-critical decision in which the surgeon doesn't have that much time to sort of analyze the results and figure out how the answer was obtained, that also becomes a medical device. And finally, if it's the black box is still there, the existence of a black box, that is, people can't necessarily understand the explainability of the software, then it's also considered a device. So one of the things that we have seen that is different than going through the regular channels of, let's say, 510K approval for a class 2 device is the idea of a predetermined change control plan. Because of the fact that the AI system, the algorithms are in effect dynamic systems, as opposed to regular software, which is a static system. So then the question becomes, how do you deal with that? So the FDA in their latest guidance document has allowed people to put together a predetermined change control plan telling exactly to the FDA how you're going to deal with a changing algorithm as the real world data comes in. And so the bad part for that is that you have to sort of put together this concept and what the boundaries are, and that's a lot of discussion with the FDA. The good thing is that you may not have to file multiple 510Ks. So those are some of the things that we've seen that are changes from the way things were done to the way things will be done with AI.
I'll add just one more sentence, is that once we get over that regulatory hurdle, there's still this incredible friction, new frictions at the institutional contracting level, because there's new cybersecurity review, IT integration issues, quality oversight, post-deployment monitoring, these new things that are very, very different for us than sort of typical device adoption. So it's a whole other layer of challenges.
I just wanted to add, I think that Easy Brooker touched on many important things here, but I don't think that the guidance itself is great. As you referred to the document that was published in 2025, right? The January 20. I think it was January of last year, but it's like a 20-something page document. It's not, I mean, it's kind of like lacking. But I agree that, regulations now are like very concerned about continuously learning systems, right? And why is that? Because how do you validate actually a moving target? How do you prevent performance drift? How do you ensure safety after algorithm updates? Because the traditional model was, right, like you have a device, you approve it, you lock it, and you monitor it. But here we have like a AI model which actually trains, deploy, learns, and updates, right? And so there is a lot of questions, and so I guess the FDA solution now is to allow predetermined change control plans, right? So you still have to respond in terms of what kinds of updates will occur, or how retraining will be performed, or what validation criteria will be applied. And so I feel in specifically in the luminal procedures where these are important questions, because any small little changes might actually cause big alteration performances. So that I think that it makes it that post-market surveillance extremely important.
Makes some sense.
It's great. I'm going to jump in and ask the question, shift gears a little bit. So who should be held accountable if an AI-assisted decision leads to a medical error during an endoscopy or a surgical procedure? The clinician, the AI developer, the hospital, the institute, who?
So I can say a couple words about this. I've thought a lot about this. Right now, most accountability still rests with the clinician. Most AI tools are basically just clinical support tools and not autonomous actors. The responsibility is for the physician and in many cases the healthcare system to deploy the tool within its labeled indications, consistent with credentialing standards and clinical guidelines. And the only time that the company or the algorithm might have fault is if it behaves clearly different than its specifications, whether that's because of software update or integration error. Then the manufacturer may have liability, but otherwise it's still mostly the clinician and healthcare system who are holding the bag to use available tools correctly.
I totally agree with Tyler, because all the AI systems that we have seen, there's always a disclaimer saying that the final decision depends on the HCP, whether this is the hypertension notification feature or a software advising on personalized treatment for hemophilia patients, etc. In all cases, the final decision is the HCPs. So
I agree,
Yeah,
and it's go ahead. Sorry,
Maria. No, it's fine. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I agree with that. What everybody's been saying. It depends on the type of AI and the information that's being delivered. But ultimately, it's a shared responsibility. I think it's not just all on the clinician. Industry is responsible to have an algorithm that works and reduce the risk as low as possible. So we definitely have some accountability. So that could go wrong, right? And we need to be responsible for that. But the clinicians, as people have said, are responsible for the individual patient and the decision. But also hospitals have some responsibility here for that larger feedback loop of the efficiency and the cost effectiveness. We heard some of those questions earlier of, does it make sense to bring in a new technology because you're adding more cost to a procedure? And so, I that's maybe not an error that you would identify, but it's an important part of the conversation.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. I mean, Mindy Dufour has a great article on this. I don't know if anybody else has read it, but it's just about it is about just this discussion of the liability because this is governed under torts law, but technically it doesn't actually apply unless you can't prove any negligence of the physician or the organization, and then the product liability, only if it's related to the creator's or manufacturer's failure. So it will be interesting to see in the future if there will be any cases, legal cases, and I'm sure that we're going to see those in the future.
It's always an interesting question, right? Is who's responsible, who's licensure, especially if it's a model that's providing some form of care. Who is it that is on the hook for that? So I think that that's an interesting question. Let me kind of change it up just a little bit. How can informed consent processes be adapted to include explanation of AI involvement in patient care? And what challenges does this present during a busy clinical setting, so that people know what's going on as far as where AI is involved in care?
Earlier, I think somebody mentioned in terms of human factors engineering to talking about this. So in particular, you're trying to explain something which is technically might be quite complex. So there is a patient part of it, and then there is a physician part of it. So the physician itself needs to understand what is going on and then explain it to the patient. And the patient part, at least what my understanding is right now, is that the language has to be as if you're talking to a 6th to 8th grader. So that is quite challenging in terms of writing an explanation as to what AI is doing for a 6th to 8th grader. Now, of course, the 6th or 8th graders of today are much better than the 6th or 8th graders when I was growing up. But in any case, it is a challenge.
Well, it sounds like there may be a system part to that too, right, Izzy? That the system, it's incumbent upon the systems to educate the providers well enough to know what the AI product is doing.
Yeah, there's a certain explainability.
And I would push back and say that I think most of the current tools, which are clinical support tools or computer vision for polyp detection, are just adjunctive tools. That it's similar to using a new cautery method or using a new light, and it's so much in the weeds that I actually don't think that a lot of the current tools have to be described to patients explicitly. That'll change as autonomy levels change. But right now, I don't explain if I have a new cautery machine in a different current. And a lot of the AI tools are at the level that I actually don't think they require a separate explanation right now.
Any other thoughts? Go ahead, Maria.
I mean, I feel like this is a little different though, because we're going to be relying on AI to help us or guide us in some way. So I don't rely on my cautery to guide me in any way right now. So I think that that's a little bit different. And then as Izzy mentioned, I mean, I feel like a very important part of this is us understanding how these AI softwares or programs are actually working. And I feel like we're having a very poor understanding. I mean, they have been surveys out there that majority, less than 10% of physicians, while using AI, have no idea how it works. And then even if they say that they know what they're, that they're actually proficient in it, when they're asked simple questions, they don't choose the answers that are actually accurate. So there's this misperception as well. So I think that that's crucial for us to understand how these programs work, and then also how how to explain this to the patient. We don't have to explain it in some very complicated ways. It's just as you mentioned, something simple, but we have to have that understanding.
So yeah, I agree with all those points, and I go back to what I said last question. It depends on the type of AI and what information you're delivering. I think as a healthcare provider, you're responsible for communicating risk. And I think understanding that, translating how you're using that tool into what are the risks that could arise from using that technology. It's no different than if you were using a stapler, a vessel sealer, or an imaging device. It's another technology. So you have to boil it down to what are the potential hazards that could result of this? What's the impact of that patient? And then communicate that accurately and have transparency about it.
Yeah, I think we're on the precipice of a huge cultural change, right? So what would the ethical and safety integration of AI into practice actually do? So what does that look like? I mean, you don't tell your patients, oh, by the way, I'm going to do imaging on a Philips. I'm going to use this instrument and so on. So what would the ethical and safety integration look like for AI? In your clinical practice?
So I think a lot of the concerns right now, which are at least ethical adjacent, relate to skill atrophy, over-reliance. There's a lot of focus on, how this sort of changes the training environment. So I'm particularly worried about that in particular. There's been a lot of focus on the concept of de-skilling. Sorry, I think we're hearing a little bit of extra feedback.
That's about we're hearing you.
Yeah. So there's concerns around de-skilling. I think it's probably not de-skilling, by the way. I think it probably has to do with cognitive offloading as sort of a different concept. But I think a lot that we have to focus on adjacent industries. Aviation is like the classic example that I think we need to learn from. The autopilot has tremendously improved aviation safety, but every pilot still learns to fly on a single engine aircraft and then has simulation checks to make sure they're up to date with their skills. So that's one of the areas that I think is most interesting and we have to pay attention to.
Sure. And that's something we spend a lot of time talking about too, right? Like if an AI algorithm is making even suggestions about diagnosis and stuff, it's still incumbent upon the physician to be educated enough to know if that's a valid diagnosis or treatment plan that it's suggesting. Any other thoughts about that question?
I mean, the way you just described it, it's like using a navigation system in your car. Sometimes it tells you to drive into the lake and you don't.
Right.
So
it's a great analogy. I like that. We've got just a minute left here. So let's just say any other final kind of like wrap up thoughts around the ethical and the regulatory issues surrounding AI as we start to move into this world where we're integrating this in.
Stephen, there's a great question from the chat, and I think maybe it'll be a nice transition to the next sessions.
Perfect.
This comes from Vikash. With robotics providing precision and AI providing intelligence, what happens when the two fully integrate? I'd be curious as to what this group thinks.
yeah, I'm going to jump all over that one. I absolutely love this topic. I think the power of robotics and AI together is we've only practiced of what's possible. And I'll go back to the analogy that I just made of navigation systems in your car. 20 years ago, Google Maps came out, and now I can't imagine life without it. I think you're going to see the exact same thing with clinicians. The combination of the robotics plus the navigation, like knowing where you are, and then bringing in the AI will allow you to do procedures in ways that is unprecedented, right? And allow you to have that confidence, just like when you go to a new city and you can drive around because you've got that map. You're provided real-time information. You have the collective power of multiple procedures, helping you plan that procedure, helping you execute it and then afterwards analytics. So it's an incredibly powerful combination that's going to transform everything.
And then we have maybe a quick question from Dr. Vargo. What regulatory body validates and approves an AI platform?
That will be, at least in the United States, it's FDA, as long as it's comes under the medical device. Now, not every clinician decision support tool is that uses AI is a medical device, but there are certain requirements. So if it's a medical device, it's the FDA. If it's in Europe, it will be the notified bodies and then EMA. And each country is trying to catch up. But I would say at this moment in time, FDA is probably at the farthest ahead in terms of figuring out how to deal with AI.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank all of our panelists here for participating tonight. This was great. And so thank you all very much.
Thanks very much, Drs. Loop and Dombrowski and our panelists. Great session. So we'll transition to our next section momentarily. So our third panel will be moderated by Dr. John Vargo. Many of you know Dr. Vargo very well. Dr. Vargo has been a colleague, clinical leader, and friend of many of us here at the Cleveland Clinic, where he's served as chair of gastroenterology and hepatology, also as the vice chair of the Digestive Disease Institute, and director of endoscopic research and innovation. He's also a past president of the American Society of Gastrointestinal Endoscopy, and he now serves as chair of the Department of Medicine at Metro Health. Dr. Vargo will be moderating our panel on how AI is and isn't changing our daily workflows. Dr. Vargo, thanks very much.
Thank you, Matt, for that introduction. It's really an honor to be here. So our topic today is, can AI make my workday better? Current capabilities and limitations. And, I think about scheduling, getting my cup of coffee, who's going to answer my phone calls or my inbox. And fortunately, we have all the world's experts right here who are going to answer all of these for us. So allow me to introduce our faculty. So Daniel van Rentelm is a professor of medicine at the University of Montreal. He's director of research for gastroenterology division, and he's a principal scientist at the University of Montreal's Research Center. He's published over 100 papers in leading journals, including Gastro, Gut, and the New England Journal, and has developed voice-guided AI colonoscopy documentation platforms and conducted landmark trials on autonomous AI optical diagnosis. Dr. Aurora Pryor is here with us today. She is the J. Murray Beardsley Professor and Chair of the Department of Surgery at the Warren Alpert Medical School of Brown University. She's also the Surgeon-in-Chief of Brown Health. She's a past president of SAGES and is currently president of SAGES Ingenuity. She's had over 250 publications and patents for surgical technologies. She's the founder of Women's Leadership in Surgery Society and chairs the American Board of Surgery General Surgery Board. Nayantara Coelho Prabhu is a professor of medicine at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester. She's co-director of their AI and endoscopy program and also co-chairs their enterprise video repository platform. She's course director of Mayo Clinic's Innovations in GI and Hepatology in 2026, which is entitled AI and Beyond. She's co-authored ASGE census statements on AI and endoscopy, and her research addresses AI polyp detection, patient acceptability of AI, and IBD-related neoplasia applications. Finally, Dr. Andrew Hung is a professor of urology and computational biomedicine. He's also vice chair of academic development for the Department of Urology at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where he leads an NIH-funded research group exceeding $10 million, focusing on AI-powered surgical skills assessment and automated performance metrics for robotic surgery. He has published over 200 papers in journals such as Nature, Biomedical Engineering, and JAMA Surgery, and serves as a consulting editor on AI for the British Journal of Urology. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome, and thank you for being here. So as we ponder our symposium, the first question I have for all of you is, what inefficiencies in your workplace would you like to see addressed by AI? And I have to keep you to 20 minutes. Aurora, why don't you start out for us?
Yeah, John, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I think everything that touches somebody in our workflow could be handled by AI. So from new consult and new consult delegation, some streamlining in the clinic, the ambient dictation that can make our notes easier and get them through, from a coding and billing from our clinic workflow, OR scheduling, OR notes. There's things for the whole way through our process, and even advisors for how we manage our patients post-operatively. I would love to see some of those efficiencies, particularly where things that get us bogged down and answering our patient calls. Any of those things, I think, could make our work life easier as long as they're done well.
Thank you. Andrew?
Yeah, so I work in a relatively niche space of trying to improve surgeon performance in the operating room. And we have a real problem. It's not about life or death in many situations, but it's in terms of functional outcomes. I'll give you an example. After prostatectomy, robotic prostatectomy for prostate cancer, it's a procedure we've been doing for many decades. The success rate for sexual function recovery is about 35%. Surgeons do fine, but the patients don't, and it takes a whole year to declare, how that outcome may be. And so we're trying to use AI to size up how surgeons may look in the operating room, but more importantly, how does that performance in the operating room translate to outcomes? And I think AI is really one of those ways that we can change what we've been doing for decades and change practice.
Thank you. Nana? You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, hear you well.
Excellent.
Thank you. No
Thank
problem.
You.
Yeah.
So my word is primarily endoscopy, but I think a big need in routine clinical practice for practitioners is patient records. And so one of the areas where I think we can really, and a sort of a low-hanging fruit is, can we get together relevant patient history, improve clinic visits, and improve the patient's care by explaining, they don't have to carry all of this stuff with them. We can pull that electronically now. In the endoscopy suite, I think there's a huge role. We've had great talks in the first session about all the various ways that AI is being applied to GI endoscopy, but there's so much more. I think there's, scheduling, there is a stocking. We can really improve workflows for a lot of these areas. And of course, auto documentation and then billing. I think those would all be on our wish list for routine cases.
Thank you. Daniel? Daniel's kind of locked up. I'll
Sorry, I was muted.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem, please.
Thank you for having. So the two big things for me would be first to have the reporting and okay, but I would summarize, we need a really good to function. As everyone, for instance, like often we don't type we just having the same thing that in my computer say for a follow-up in 6 months, and leveraging what we have available and pass it our five if the hospital, and that the transition is it's slow, but I think potential is then.
Okay. Thanks, Daniel. Daniel, you're still kind of breaking up. I'll ask you to maybe come off and come back on again. I noticed one thing that's not on here. I'm going to take a little purview here, because we have a lot of very sophisticated people who train people every day. So one of the things that could make it easier for me, if I could, the trainee interface, we have productivity pressure and we have training pressure, and no one on this call or anywhere has figured out the magic bullet to marry them both. do you think that AI will be a welcome piece for training? Will it identify proclivity for laparoscopic cholecystectomy, Aurora, or maybe Andrew for doing a prostatectomy, or Nina for being able to see, being able to identify polyps more effectively? Do you think there's ever going to be a time where AI is going to aid us in helping us figure out the proclivity skill set for training?
Yeah, so John, I do think that AI can help us a lot in training. I think Andrew mentioned video assessment, and I think some of that feedback we can give to our trainees about what they're doing really well and what they need to work on would be extremely helpful in doing this on a much more frequent touch point basis. And end of rotation evaluation would be extremely helpful to how we do things, and let them know specific things and tasks to work on could be very, very helpful and offload our faculty.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Yeah, so John, what we've done at Mayo, for example, is we universally record all our videos. And the goal is now for trainees, what we're trying to develop is little algorithms that will be able to snip the important parts of a procedure. And so if a trainee does, we're requesting them that this is down the road, but can you get 10 of your dilations? And those videos will be clipped so that we can have one of our staff sort of, one of the more experienced endoscopists review just those 10 with them on a one-on-one, and then use that. So it's a little bit of manual work. The AI components there, I think, come into play for video editing and clipping, etc. But I think these are areas where we can start to improve. The eventual goal would be for the AI to tell them real time while they're doing this, maybe you need to do a different balloon or turn. With the kind of video capture we have yet, there are so many patient scenarios. So I know Aurora and Andrew, you probably have more recording of in-room procedures, but in GI, we have not traditionally done external to the body video recording to know patient, endoscopist position and how you're moving your body and how you can correct that. So I think those are still going to require the teacher in the room to help guide trainees through that. But there are some technical aspects that I think we can improve with the use of video and AI.
Thank you.
If I can
Andrew,
add,
any thoughts?
Yeah, so one of our new initiatives is recording not only the video but also the audio of the trainer and trainee and teaching cases. So everyone's very well behaved, of course, when they're mic'd, and there's very little banter in our operating rooms. But one of our pilot projects is using AI-based sentiment analysis to characterize the feedback either as positive or negative. We call it the emoji project because at the end, every case gets a scaling emoji from the crying rivers to a very happy face, and it's based on the proportions of how much positive or negative comments the trainer has provided. And in any given case, there could be hundreds of lines or instances of feedback, and when you, at the end of the case, you want to distill it down to what was the meat of the feedback? What was the overriding message that the trainer wanted to provide? And one of the places where we've learned to look is where the negative, quote unquote, negative feedback comes in, because that's where some of the substance to the teaching is happening. And so I think that's perhaps the opportunity as a filter, a smart filter, where we're looking for, what are the kernels of wisdom being conveyed.
Thank you, Andrew. Our next question is, if you had the ability after this phone call to develop an AI-based platform to improve your practice, what would it be? Daniel?
So the first platform I want reporting is to think that is cognitively endoscopy, and it is written output so as feedback during the procedure, which we to the request.
Okay, thank you. Andrew?
I think it all comes down to time, right? Time is probably our most valuable asset. So anything that will improve efficiency without compromising quality, and again, not to harp on the educational aspects of surgery, a resident's time with us is 5 years, maybe 6 years, and so, and especially with all the duty hours that are involved, uh, making sure that every second of time that they have is most opportunely used. Again, having a smart way of collecting the maximizing, for every moment that's being utilized, what's the purpose and what's the motivation, and ensuring that the substance is always there for every moment that they have. Seems like a lofty goal.
Thank you. Nina?
I think I would have a system that would do auto documentation, almost even better than what. So, in clinic, the ambient scribes have really changed practice. And I think extending that to endoscopy, I know there's work in urologic surgery to capture that, and maybe even automatically. So the AI component here is, can the AI detect what that size of the polyp is, know what I'm doing, and all I need to teach it are a few components that I don't have to do. But if I could get to that stage where a lot of my documentation was done, I think that would free up, like Andrew said, time that's really quite useless at this point.
Thank you. Aurora?
Yeah, so as a chair of surgery, money's getting tighter and tighter. So I want to make sure we get paid for what we're actually doing. So I would really like better coding and billing for both procedures and clinic, but not just based on our current documentation, but giving us some pointers back about how we could expand our documentation. You're just missing it. If you did this, you would get paid more, would be extremely helpful for us so that we could actually teach our people to document better so that we can get paid.
Great. So I'm blessed to have a panel of just incredible innovators. So we bring the idea of something to bear, an AI platform, but it doesn't make the grade through the system. What are some of the obstacles you, as outstanding practitioners and innovators, have run against that have hindered you in bringing AI platforms to bear in your practice? Anyone?
I think
I'll
also,
start.
I think, yeah. I think authorization and regulation I think is a big one. The field is, the innovation is happening too fast for regulators to keep up. So I'd say regulation, and the second would be reimbursement. These are not easy technologies to develop, and having a pathway to reimbursement, I think, is really what is required.
Right. Anyone else?
I would say that trust is an issue. For our models to work, it requires surgeons to upload their videos, to share their patient outcomes. And on the receiving end, is the same surgeon is going to receive a report card of how they performed. So why should a surgeon share their video? Why should they share their patient outcomes? And why should they accept the verdict of what we provide as their skill assessment or performance assessment? A decade ago, when I started in this space, no surgeon was willing to share the videos. Fast forward a decade later, we have 13 different hospitals across the country, dozens and dozens of surgeons sharing their videos and their outcomes because they have finally seen value there. But it's not an easy space to provide assessment to a surgeon or a clinician to say how they're doing fundamentally. But I think ultimately people are motivated by how well their patients do, and delivering on value and maintaining trust. I would say is certainly the greatest hurdle that I face.
Thank you.
And for me, it comes down to actually a return on investment. So to get us to invest in a new AI technology embedded in our EMR, embedded in our workflow, I have to be able to sell that it's going to make money for us. And if it's just making our surgeons or our physicians happier, that's not going to cut it. It's really got to show something. So I think billing and coding's easy. Ambient dictation, if it takes away some of our documentation time, that's easy. You know, I'm a surgical educator. It's really important to me, but it's harder to sell education software, some of those things. And we need to just figure out how to message these things better so we can continue the investment in things that we find that are really important for us in the whole spectrum of what we do as physicians.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up that educational piece, Aurora, because, you know, if you can show value added and you can demonstrate it, it's a whole lot easier going through your administrative constellation to where you say, I can train my surgeons, my surgical residents better to do the prostatectomy, for example, unless you can show OR time or something like that. So I think that's always been a concern of mine, that the training aspect of AI is sort of it just doesn't get the value added just because of the productivity pressure that we're under. So here's another one. We're in the endoscopy suite, and the AI, you want to do something, and the AI platform says no. So are you concerned about AI making clinical decisions for you? And how can these concerns be addressed? I have to just say something. A couple of weeks ago in the New England Journal, in the Wall Street Journal, there was this AI where the AI platform was actually spontaneously responding back to the user with insults. And, you know, it says, are we ever going to get to that level where somebody says, you know, Dr. Pryor, I wouldn't do that right now. I would do that. So again, my question is, are you concerned about AI making clinical decisions for you, and how can these concerns be addressed? Anyone?
It always needs to be a suggestion and not a mandate until we prove that it's better than us.
Agreed.
I think having AI provide some kind of feedback certainly can provide a opportunity to push the brakes, to slow down, and to perhaps, you know, be challenged in a non-threatening way. But ultimately, I do agree that the clinician should retain that as the clinician to make the ultimate decision and bear that responsibility. But certainly having the opportunity to pause, reflect, and decide if it's truly the right maneuver.
Thank you. Just one other question I have for this group is, how do we improve collaboration across centers with AI ideas and research? Me too. I think that's going to be, we have these networks where we're all using the same platforms, and I think we got the regulatory environment, the cybersecurity, the IP phobia, things of this nature. I think one of the things we've learned about AI is it's iterative, and through that iteration, it becomes more powerful. And I think it's going to be incumbent upon us to kind of figure that out a little bit better, and how we can become more cohesive from a practice standpoint and quality, as well as teaching. I think if we don't get, I think our Aurora and Andrew, I think the surgical piece of training, you have a national repository of training data. Wouldn't it be nice to have a report card, or you can see where your trainees are on that bell curve, and be able to react and give more training pieces for them. So with that, Matt, I think we're almost done, huh? Is this it?
Yeah, right on time, John.
Okay.
Outstanding.
All right. Well, I want
to
thank my speakers. They were fantastic, and thanks for putting up with me.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Dr.
Thanks for
Varga.
having us.
What a great session. I feel like there's so many different opportunities to discuss that in more detail, maybe for future sessions. We have one word from our sponsor, and then we'll get back to our final and hopefully most engaging session of the night.
The self-assembling peptide, RADA16, is a short chain of amino acids that, due to its configuration of attracting forces, spontaneously organizes itself into a viscous fibrous structure. RADA16's smart peptides disassemble under shear stress for easy injection and reassemble instantly to adapt to its environment, making it ideal for various clinical applications. When RADA16 comes into contact with the neutral pH conditions of a mucosal surface, its nanofibers are activated and undergo physical cross-linking, forming a scaffold structure very similar to a human extracellular matrix, or ECM. This scaffold forms a protective barrier, facilitating cell aggregation and clot formation to stop bleeding. The barrier shields the wound, supporting healthy levels of inflammation and providing an ideal environment to facilitate proliferation and remodeling, including fast reepithelialization, promoting healing. As the body heals, RADA16 safely degrades into non-toxic amino acids, leaving behind no trace. At 3D Matrix, we've spent over 20 years pioneering this technology, and we continue to push the boundaries of innovation.
Thanks again to Dr. Vargo and our panelists for an outstanding session. For our final panel, we flipped the script a bit. I'm delighted to introduce two rising stars, trainees here at the Cleveland Clinic, who've done exceptional work at the intersection of surgery and innovation. Dr. Burke Osmond is a postdoctoral research fellow in plastic surgery here at Cleveland Clinic and a recognized expert in AI in healthcare with publications spanning AI applications, regulatory frameworks, and computational approaches in surgery. And Dr. Young Lee, our advanced MIS and flexible surgical endoscopy fellow who works across our GI and surgical teams, brings a uniquely bridging perspective to the question where AI and autonomous surgery are heading. So they'll be moderating this final session, an intensely provocative conversation around autonomous surgery, the goal or Pandora's box. Burke and Young.
Thank you very much, Dr. Crow, for the kind introduction. Me and Young are very, very happy to be here and moderating the session. We got a fantastic panel today. We got Mr. Romero Dorai, Mr. Munikrishnan, Dr. Telem, and Dr. Filicori. I'll start with the introductions. So Mr. Romero Dorai is the Global Head of Innovation for Robotic Surgery Technologies at Medtronic, where he has led the commercialization strategy for the Hugo RAS platform and the integration of AI and machine learning into surgical robotics. He holds a PhD in robotics from Washington University and an MBA from London Business School, with prior leadership roles at iRobot Healthcare and Proximie. Mr. Munikrishnan is Director of the Institute of Colorectal Surgery at Apollo Hospitals, Chennai, and India's highest volume robotic colorectal surgeon with over 600 robotic procedures performed. UK trained with FRCS, he achieved the first clinical experience worldwide with the Hugo RAS system for colorectal surgery and operates across both Intuitive and Medtronic robotic platforms.
Hello, everyone. I also wanted to introduce Dr. Dana Telem. She's a Lazar J. Greenfield Professor of Surgery, Section Head of General Surgery, and Associate for Quality and Patient Safety at the University of Michigan. She's an elected member of the American Surgical Association and NIH funding, and she's a national leader in implementation science and the responsible integration of AI into surgical practice. And we also have Dr. Filicori, who's Assistant Chief of Surgical Innovation at Northwell Health, and also Program Director for MIS Fellowship at Lennox Hospital. And he directs the Intraoperative Performance Analytics Laboratory there. His work including collaborations with Columbia University on machine learning in surgery, and also AI-based surgical skills assessment and robotic bariatric surgery outcomes is his expertise. And thank you everyone for really sacrificing part of their Monday to be here and to share their insight with us. So Burke will start off with the first question for everyone.
Thank you, Young. So I'd like to start out by asking a question to Dr. Filicori. Dr. Filicori, I have read your fantastic publications, and you have been doing a fantastic job
or at your research lab. So to my knowledge, we haven't yet seen prospective multi-center validation of closed loop surgical autonomy under real world conditions. What do you see as the timeline and evidence threshold before that becomes an ultimate reality?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. So I think like the the closest thing that we have to autonomy being deployed in the real world, it's going to be around endoscopic use cases. There is some great work done in the UK, for example, and the regulatory framework is also a little easier over there. And we're there, like the system is there, works, can complete a colonoscopy autonomously. And so I would expect that to be kind of the first use case being deployed in the surgical space. For more surgical like use cases, the where we are right now, like we started off like having these autonomous platforms looking at like diffusion models. So like diffusion models are models that basically imitate based on video. I mean, they can do a lot of things, but their best application is imitation based on video. And a lot of that work that was coming out of the major US labs, like namely Hopkins and Berkeley, was looking at that. And and then we kind of realized that diffusion itself was just not enough because you need a level of explainability, and you also need a level of reasoning in autonomous surgery. And so most of the latest work is done by overlaying like a language model to these diffusion models so that you can actually communicate with the model itself and have it like complete some tasks. And just this morning, perhaps like one of the hardest things to do in the surgical space is suturing. That's one of the most technical things. And I saw one example of like a robot being powered by video language models that was able to carry out like suturing. So I don't think it's easy for me to give you a precise timeline, but I think things are moving very, very fast in this space. As I said, like language is very important, and for that reason, we came up with like an ontology, a dictionary around surgical actions with the SAGES AI committee 2 weeks ago. And that ontology is going to be used in order to release the largest multimodal data set that has ever been released in surgery, the OpenH data set, which will be released at NVIDIA GTC in 2 weeks from now. So I don't know, probably first application, some, autonomous tasks, like a smaller procedure, smaller part of the surgery, you're talking like 3 to 5 years. But there could be surprises.
With those models mentioned, like the fusion models, tensor systems, and like LLMs, the speed of innovation and the development over the past few years is immense and just fantastic. Like looking forward, what do you think is like the true bottleneck? Is it computer vision to recognize anatomy and help guide the systems, or the LLMs that will be some sort of glue that will just connect all these systems together and just AI agents? Now, what do you think would be the true bottleneck for those surgical community to achieve that level of precision and level of autonomy?
Yeah, the true bottleneck, I think, is going to be reasoning, right? So from a semantic standpoint, these models were able to basically put in like reasoning into semantic frameworks, and we haven't still seen any of that in the procedural space. Because like it's very difficult to model for tissue deformability, and we're seeing the first examples of that being done. And B, because like it's just tough like to train a surgeon, and 95% of what we learn in residency is not learned on books. It's learned like on the field. And to decode that level of knowledge that we all acquired through so many years and dedication, it's just going to be tough.
I see. Thank you.
Building on that question, so I think there is this idea somewhere in the distant or near future that maybe this complete autonomous surgery will perhaps reduce some of the cognitive load of a surgeon? I think that was also mentioned in the previous sessions for endoscopy or surgery. In all of your opinions, like, do you think it actually does that, or does it really move the proceduralist into a more high stakes monitoring role, just like as if you're supervising a resident or trainee? And where does the risk become, the vigilance failure?
I'm sorry, I lost like 10 seconds of your question. If you could repeat the tail, because like I had a lagging connection.
Yes, sir. Just to repeat that question, there's this idea that autonomous surgery can reduce cognitive load of a proceduralist, but does it actually, or does it just move the surgeon into a more high stakes monitoring role? And where do you see that future?
Well, I mean, before we even see automation of several part of a procedure, we're going to see intraoperative feedback, right? So cognitive load, we'll figure out that question way ahead of like autonomous procedures, because like we're going to have to figure out like how cognitive load gets shifted as you're getting an AI to tell you like to do something as opposed to something else. And we're going to have to figure out like exactly how to deliver the information to the surgeon in the best possible way. And we're going to have to figure out what happens when a surgeon, gets fed information from a model that gives you 25 right predictions, and then the 26th prediction is wrong. So does the surgeon get, enough critical, ability to tell when the prediction is wrong or not? I mean, there is some research done in that space. Most of the people that do these autonomous systems, like they all stress out the fact that you need to introduce a lot of friction in these systems, right? So continuous like prompts to the user that tell him like, hey, use your mind, just, remember the AI can get it wrong and so on. But I mean, that's a bigger like user interface question that will need to be solved over the next several years.
I had a question for Dr. Talem. Dr. Talem, in surgical AI, what do you think will be the ultimate ground truth? Like expert consensus, outcomes, imaging? How do we define correctness intraoperatively so that we can build systems that are better prepared for the future?
So I think the ultimate truth for any AI is, does people use it, right? And if you look at development of AI right now, 80% of what's adopted gets de-adopted, because I think there's some of this lack of attention to the user interface in which it connects. We've done a lot of different work with surgeons trying to better understand what they want and what they expect from AI, how they resolve issues of cognitive dissonance when the machine is saying one thing and you're thinking how they want information and that. And I think right now there's discordance with how things are being designed, with sort of this mentality of, if our data are just accurate enough, people are going to believe it and people are going to use it. And if I can just make it more accurate, everyone's going to want it. But how many times do we know things are correct and still not do it because it butts up against our firmly held beliefs? So I think we need to spend a lot of attention in terms of the usability, believability, and actually understanding what people want within the AI. It's funny because I've heard several people tonight talk about system design that goes directly against a lot of what we talked about with surgeons. Surgeons don't want to be told what to do. They just want to be told when they're not doing, or they're about to do something wrong. They don't want frequent interactions. They want to be able to trust machines like superhumans, because we don't educate that better than good is sometimes best. And how do you resolve those things? So I think there's a lot we need to think about. And then to this panel on sort of autonomy and autonomous robots, whenever I think about this, I think about what is the problem we're trying to solve and who are we trying to solve for and how might we disenfranchise other people. And having autonomous robots is really, really cool. I mean, who doesn't want to do that? The notion is really exciting. But at the same time, can we get democratization of that? Can we get that to the persons who might need that in rural communities? Is that where the cost effectiveness is going to go? Are we going to create have and have nots? Are we going to widen the disparity in outcomes between people who are eligible for robotic surgery versus have to have open surgery? And what kind of inequities is that going to breed if we're spending all our focus with a segment of the population and excluding another segment coming out. And so sometimes I think, and then the economic and then the environmental, and I'm not going to speak to, the environmental impact of full autonomy and what it takes to mine all these things. So while I think it's great, I think there's a lot of broader questions. And if we have a finite amount of resources, we really need to think about where should we deploy them, in the mix, and how do we create solutions that benefit all people so we can leverage the AI knowledge versus just a select few who are fortunate enough to be on a robotic platform.
Yeah, totally. I agree.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. And I think that actually led to my next question where, if this autonomous robots, a lot of buzzwords, becomes really integrated into this future, who do you think actually benefits financially? Is it the hospitals, the industry, payers, and how do we make sure those incentives stay aligned with patient outcomes, not just increasing volume in a busy center that's already putting out large number of cases through their resources?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that. I think we need to think about what we're trying to achieve at the highest level. I think we should look at autonomy or automation in surgery in the context of, can you democratize hyper-personalization of care at the lowest cost possible? I think that's where you're going to deliver the most benefits. I think we should focus less on the technology. I think the technology is a means, but if you have that as the goal, then I think we'll make the right choices with putting the patient in the center and applying automation or autonomy in the right way. Because there's a lot we could do. That doesn't mean we should do it. Another example, I think we've talked a lot about the automotive industry, the aviation industry. I think there's a lesson to be learned from the industrial automation, which is probably the largest robotics market. If you went back 30 years, 40 years, a lot of industrial automation was for dull, dirty, and dangerous jobs, and there was a separation between robots and humans. But if you look at the last 10 years, that market has actually changed, and there's been a new segment where there are these cobots where the humans and the robot interact. And that is, in fact, the largest, fastest growing market in industrial automation, where there's actually a trend from full automation to cooperative automation. So I think we have to think of autonomous surgery as a means by which the robots and the humans can collaborate. I think robots are very good on some things. Human beings are very good on some things. And for a high-stake task like surgery, I think the combination is going to be better than either of them alone. And I think that's the way we should think about autonomy. So I think if you look in the long term, it'll probably look like a bell curve. If you see all the tasks, some tasks are going to be totally manual. Some tasks are going to be really autonomous. But a lot of the tasks are going to fall in the middle where they're going to cooperate.
Are there specific procedures or environments that you think where autonomy clearly could add value today?
I think if you look at historically application of robotics, if it's a well-structured or semi-structured space where you have a lot of repetitive tasks, and I think those things fit automation or autonomy. And there are several frameworks. There's some in the vehicle industry, and there's one, I think it's called ALSAF, that the Army put out, which is for unmanned vehicles. It's got different stages, and they're all essentially the same thing. They start from no autonomy to complete autonomy and everything in between. It's a question of how you slice that continuum. So I think you really have to pick and choose which tasks you're going to do. But robots are good at kind of repetitive, highly constrained tasks for the most part.
Yeah.
And for all of our panels, let's say, if we fast forward 15 years or so, like, what does the success actually look like in this field, or realistic success of autonomous surgery? I would love to hear from all the panels about this.
Hi, thanks for having me on the panel. So where we are today, so we're doing a lot of robotics. It's on a master and slave concept. And now we're talking about autonomous surgery at the other end of the spectrum. Now, in between, there is lots of work to be done. Now, we're slowly seeing multiple platforms. We work with Intuitive, Medtronic, SSI, which is an Indian platform, and several other robots are coming with variable capabilities. Now, layering in teleproctoring and telesurgery and testing it is where we realistically finding clinical use. So in the last couple of years, we've seen lots and lots of data come out on telesurgery. There is a recent paper, a randomized controlled trial in prostate surgery, where they've shown that there is no difference between, in sort of in-room surgery and telesurgery, which is, I think that's where the data is starting to evolve. And I think more work needs to be done so that, as of now, we have the surgeon and the patient in the same room. We're starting to see that relationship extended to different rooms. The SSI Mantra platform now has come up with a telesurgical chair. So it becomes a portable chair where you are able to sit in a clinic or an office setting and do surgery. And that's, again, the data is coming out and is getting published. So we are assessing the real clinical use of these technologies, and we're finding, for example, the latency for a round trip latency is around 270 milliseconds. Anything less than 400 is great. Now, these are all the basic building blocks of where we want to be. Now, as Dr. Telem said, where are we going to use this? We can't really put this technology and its uses in ivory towers. The whole point of autonomous surgery or telesurgery is where we're breaking down geographies. That's the whole point. Where we're going to use this. You're going to get great care in New York or at the Cleveland Clinic, but in remote locations where they can't access these technologies, where surgeons with skill sets are not available, and I think that's where robotics, advanced robotics, telesurgery, teleproctoring, and also autonomous surgery are going to find real clinical use. So to get to that point, there are several layers which need to be tested, and I think as more data evolves, I think you'll see that it becomes safer, but it needs to go through a process. Telesurgery is one step in between before we become autonomous. And then who supervises these autonomous robots? So there are several questions, both ethical, moral, I don't know. That's a different discussion to have. But I think breaking geographies is the key question here, and how do we do that so that patients can access your expertise in any part of the world?
So can I know we're out of time, Matt, and I'm sorry, but I just want to put a fine point on this, which is the art of surgery is only in part the procedure. And as we democratize and bring complicated cases with our expertise to other parts of the world that aren't equipped to take care of those patients or manage the complications, or in lower resource settings, we have to also ask, what support are we going to give on the ground there? Because it's all well and good to do a surgery or to do an esophagectomy, or for Matt Crow to do that esophagus in rural, but all the data suggests that outcomes are really around managing failure to rescue, managing complications. And what my fear is that as we democratize and push this out, every health system wants to maintain these high RVU, high DRG cases there. And so we push more and more of these cases there to telesurgery and telepresence, but at what peril? And are we going to see rises in complications and different things because they're not equipped to do it? So I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I just want us to all remember that the care of a surgical patient is only in part the procedure, but really involves that continuity, and especially when complications arise, and who's there to manage that when there's a leak at 2 a.m. or a GDA blowout, from a Whipple that somebody did. And I think we have to understand how we can get that care out part and parcel with some of these technologies, so we make sure that we're not disadvantaging certain patient populations given the whole of the financial and other market.
Great point, Dana. I know we're really up to time, but it's such a unique opportunity to have such expertise on this call. I'm going to ask each of our panelists in 30 seconds to answer this question. I'll give each of you a chance to answer. Obviously, this is a tremendous topic, and there'll be some time and many steps to get to fruition of what we're hoping for here. But wearing each of your leadership hats, clinical, society, industry, and every blend in between that you represent, what's the next practical step that you hope to achieve to move toward this ultimate goal? And why don't we start with you, Filippo?
I think we have a huge need
30
for
seconds.
these ontologies and dictionaries, right? So create like kind of like the dictionary for making, procedural analytics, autonomous actions, and, computer vision and mediated video-based assessment work. So that's where I'm going to focus.
Great. Venki.
Subspecialization, high volume robotics, moving telesurgery, autonomous surgery, all under supervision, but maintaining high quality outcomes. How do we do it? That's the area of focus.
Arvind.
Yeah, I think we need to understand that the surgical process. I think we need to be able to break down the surgical process properly so that we can analyze where autonomy fits in perfectly and adds value. So I think breaking down the surgery into its constituent steps and really moving the needle from there would be a nice step.
Dana, the final word.
Honestly, just getting people to record video or learn how to interface with this technology in the operating room. Everyone on this call is so advanced. Most people can't even figure out how to record a case or do something. And if we expect them to use this technology, we got to get everybody up to par, not just the brilliant 1%ers that are on this teleconference. Not the most exciting answer, but I think it's the most truth. We have to get people used to using technology in the operating room that isn't just, a robot, before that.
All right, Young and Burke, your final comments, and then we'll close out the session.
This has been a very valuable session, and I learned a lot. Thank you to each and every one of you, and I'm very thankful to Young as well. I think this has been a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for the amazing opportunity. Thank you to the panelists, the moderator, all the moderators for previous sessions, and the audience. I think it's great that we're having this conversation to advance this field forward together.
All right, outstanding. What a remarkable event. Thanks, everybody, for your participation. I want to really start by thanking our outstanding moderators, Dr. Spivak, Dr. Loop, Dr. Dombrowski, Dr. Vargo, Dr. Osman, and Dr. Lee, for guiding tonight's conversations with depth and clarity and interest and passion. The future's bright for all these tremendous emerging areas. A tremendous thank you to our panelists. Absolute international world-class expertise. But beyond that, your candor and your intellectual energy to move all of these fields forward is really empowering and exciting. And all of the attendees tonight who joined, your engagement in the questions was tremendous, and it's what makes a forum like this worthwhile. And also to my co-program director, Dr. Amit Bhatt, who won't be here at the end, for putting the program together and really putting his excitement, enthusiasm, and expertise to making this a worthwhile event. A final thank you to our sponsor, 3D Matrix, whose generous support made tonight possible. And before we sign off, I do want to make you aware of other opportunities and educational events at Cleveland Clinic. Ease your way into the esophagus, which is a course designed to interpret esophageal tests and therapeutic interventions with a hands-on course in April at Cleveland Clinic main campus here in Cleveland. Our annual third space, now our 8th annual third space endoscopy, endoscopic intramural surgery tricks of the trade, with also an annual hands-on course, June 18 to 19. The Cleveland Clinic Advanced Endoscopy course, CADEC, September 25 through 26. And our ESD Endo-Robotic Symposium in November 5 and November 6th. Additionally, we have an exciting announcement. We'll be having our inaugural in-person Surgery and Endoscopy Innovation Forum, September 24th of this year in Cleveland, Ohio. And it's a great opportunity to meet with innovators across clinicians, engineers, industry startups, and even venture capital groups, what promises to be a truly unique event. So save the date and stay tuned for more details. You can follow this QR code for a full listing of our upcoming educational programs. And with that, thank you all very much for your active participation. It's been a great forum, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.